Please welcome Krista Satterthwaite.
Welcome everybody to the Compute session, and thank you so much for being here today. I look forward to Discover every year, and my favorite part is interacting with our customers and our partners, getting feedback, and seeing what resonates with them. I have a tradition when I'm here. I like to go to the lunch hall, and I like to sit with a random customer and just ask them how the show is going. So one year I did this, and I said, "What was your favorite session?" And he lit up, and he said, "The synergy session." And he looked at me and he said, "It's composable." And then he said, "I took notes during the session because I think what I saw could really help our organization. And a lot of our team members couldn't be here." And I said, "Oh, you took notes?" He said, "Yeah, you want to see them?" Like, "Yeah, I want to see them." So he pulls out his phone, and I look at it, and it's not what I expected at all. And I said, "Could I take a picture of this to share with other people?" He said, "Sure, you can." And I'm going to share it with you today. And I'm going to explain why it wasn't what I expected. It's only 25 words, and he captured the session perfectly. I worked on the session with my team, and he captured it perfectly. This was in 2018, and I've kept it. And I look at it before I get here because it reminds me of something really important. It's not just about experiencing Discover and being here. It's about what you take away that can help your business. So our job in these sessions is to make it easier to take away things for your business, to help improve things for you. And so today, at the end, I'm going to share my 25-word takeaway for you. It may be a little different than what you take away, so you can kind of mentally compare them just to make it a little easier so that you can take home something to share with your colleagues. Now let's get started. So yesterday, Antonio talked a lot about workloads. He talked about AI and generative AI and how much it's growing. And that's true. And our ProLiant servers are part of our PC AI solution, which is custom made for enterprises to create a turnkey solution to get up and started really quickly. But there's another element of AI, and it's been around for a while. Traditional AI, machine learning, things like computer vision, and predictive maintenance, trying to improve that. We've been doing that for years, and many of you have too. But that's growing as well. And it's growing a lot at the edge. Edge is growing, and they're trying to do more and more AI at the edge. And edge is tough. Edge is not a curated, controlled environment like a data center is. It's more like the Wild West. And my first job was at the edge. If you guys think back, a lot of your first jobs were probably at the edge too. Mine was at Hardee's in Peoria, Illinois. Hardee's is a fast food restaurant, and I was in high school, and it was summertime, and I had no car, so I walked everywhere to try to apply everywhere to get a job. And finally, Hardee's hired me, and they handed me my Hardee's uniform, which was brown polyester pants and an orange and brown plaid shirt. And it was as ugly as it sounds, and it was used. Somebody else had wore it before I did. But I was thrilled because I had a job. And while I was working there, I realized that customer experiences and employee experiences are made or broken at the edge. That is where everyone lives. Everyone lives at the edge. And edge is not built for IT equipment. It's built for flipping burgers and assembling machinery and checking in patients and stocking shelves. Yet, a lot of customers are trying to get the edge to do more and more for them from a technology standpoint, like run AI and analyze data real time. And all of this needs to be done securely. When technology fails at the edge, you know it right away. This is when the patient can't check in because the screen froze. Or you have a retail associate trying to check inventory, but they can't, and they're standing right in front of their customer, and the system's lagging. Or something comes through an assembly line and gets the wrong product information. And my personal favorite, which happened to me last week, we can't take debit cards or credit cards right now because our machine is broken. When this happens, it's not just a technology failure, it's a customer experience failure and an employee dissatisfaction issue. And that happens every day. Now, we have one customer that's really done a good job improving their operations at the edge. Bosch is a multinational engineering and technology company. And they have machinery that was getting more and more complex. And they were having a little bit of trouble because they were experiencing more downtime than they were happy with. And they wanted a way to better predict what was going to fail before it failed. So they wanted to do a digital twin. And they thought about using cloud, but the problem was they had a lot of remote sites with limited connectivity or no connectivity. And they were going to scale the solution, and they were afraid that if scaled it in a public cloud, the cost would go too high. So we helped them create a digital twin that they can create some simulations to try to see how things would fail, predict failures in the future, and it worked. They were able to better predict failures, which meant that they reduced their downtime. They also got more energy efficient in the process, and their assets lasted a lot longer, and they could do that all cost effectively. So they were thrilled, and so were we. Now, another workload that we see is growing is virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI. We're hearing about this more and more. Now, this has been around for a long time, but the problem was there were only some customers you could put on a VDI implementation because the compute and the technology in general just wasn't sophisticated enough for high-end users. So maybe you could put your task workers on, but you couldn't put your engineering team on or other high-performance users. But now that's changed. Technology's come a long way. With accelerators, you can get near local experience for graphics-intensive workloads. So we're seeing this more in manufacturing, healthcare, and financial services. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later. Now, when it comes to new workloads, it doesn't come without its challenges. So there's many challenges when it comes to the IT environment, and I don't have to tell you that security is one of them. Hackers have gotten more sophisticated. Data breaches can cost, $5 million minimum, and we're seeing it more and more. And what we're hearing from you is you're concerned about physical security and securing your data center from unauthorized users. You're also concerned about cybersecurity. And with the edge growing, it's harder to secure things at the edge. Then there's a couple other risks that we're just now hearing people become more concerned about. The next one is supply chain risks. So concerns about somebody tampering with something before it gets to you. And quantum computing. Even though this is going to be great for technology breakthroughs, The challenge is when it comes to the encryption we're using today, quantum computing is going to be a threat in terms of being able to potentially break that encryption. So we got to make sure what we're putting in to our data centers is going to be able to handle when quantum computing comes up. Next challenge, lack of visibility and timely insights. When you're managing a server operation and you're managing it around the world and in the data center, and you've got to control everything, it's all about what you can see, when you can see it, and how fast you can handle it. And so people need to see things, more things, faster and much more easily. And it's not just about managing what server's on, what server's off, what problem you have. You're also getting demands about power consumption. How are we doing on sustainability? A lot more usage reporting. So that's another challenge that needs to be addressed in the data center. Now, inefficiency. So if you're running on very, very old servers, you are not getting the most out of your space and your power. You're not enjoying the latest security features. And there's challenges sometimes when you want to adopt new OSs and you have old servers in your environment. So this is another challenge that needs to be addressed. Now, with HPE Compute, we introduced ProLiant Gen12 in February, and we introduced it to address all those challenges that I mentioned and to be able to handle those emerging workloads. We're delivering next level security. We're delivering optimized hardware, and it's not just the performance, but also the power efficiency that goes with that performance, because you can't just increase the performance and forget all about power. And we're delivering AI-driven productivity. Now, the portfolio that we announced is here. You can see we have multiple different workloads supported, multiple form factors, and these are available now. And to talk you through our ProLiant Gen12 innovations, I'd like to welcome to the stage John Carter, Vice President of Mainstream Compute.
All right, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Krista. So I'm going to share a little bit today about some of those things that Krista just shared with you. So we're going to talk about security. We're going to talk about how we optimize systems. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we do to not only provide insight, but allow you to take action and allow AI to start taking those actions for you. So a lot of great stuff to get through very quickly. I'll try not to get too deep into the weeds here, but we are always around afterwards to talk more about this. And of course, we're demoing pretty much everything we're going to talk about out on the show floor today. So let's jump in with security. So a very nice quote up here somewhere from Matt Kimball from More Insights. And we worked with Matt and a number of our other analysts when we were getting ready to launch this generation of systems back at the beginning of the year. And what they told us was, you have a unique position in security, and this is something that really matters more now than ever with AI, with the value of data, but you don't talk about it very well. And you haven't talked about it very well for a number of years. And so we spent a lot of time really thinking about what is it that we do at HPE that makes our security unique, and why do we believe that's so important to you all as the customers? So hopefully we can break that down a little bit here and help to demystify some of the FUD that some of our competitors put out there about exactly why HPE security is second to none. So first of all, it all starts at the physical layer. We are the only OEM manufacturer of servers out there today that actually designs and builds our own ASIC for our BMC. And that's something that hopefully many of you know the name of. That's what we call ILO. So ILO has been around for many, many years. And ILO is built and designed by us because it lets us put all of the things on that ASIC that we know we need, and none of the things that we don't need, so you don't pay for those things. But why is that valuable? Well, every single year at Black Hat, other security conferences. We hear about things like bootloader vulnerabilities. That very, very first step of booting up a system where the server is vulnerable to attack, before most VMCs have kicked in and allowed their security to really take hold. That's not an issue for us because we've actually burned hash values down into the silicon itself, allowing the very first handshake at the time of boot to be secure. And that's critical because if you don't lay that foundation, then nothing else we're going to talk about here matters, because you've already lost the battle. So ILO allows you to do that to start with. Now, another great thing that we've introduced last generation was the ability to add in a trusted supply chain feature. Meaning, not only can we secure the hardware, but we can help you secure and have peace of mind that that system has gone from the factory all the way to your site in a known state, that you can track it, you know where it's been, you know who's touched it, you know what's changed. We have now expanded that ability to the entire rack scale level. So an entire rack of systems can be secured in transit to your site. So once we lay that foundation of security, well, now we can start doing some cool stuff. Right? So new features we've added here in Gen 12. The first one you see there is something that we call the Secure Enclave. Now, Secure Enclave for us, you can think about this as a vault that's within the ASIC itself. And what it's doing, it's protecting all of those server critical secrets that exist there to help protect your data. And a lot of customers, I was talking to our CTO about this, a lot of customers immediately go, well, nobody's going to break into my data center, right? Putting a chip clip onto my system while it's in production, that's not really something I'm worried about. But that's not the threat, right? The real threat is that a customer buys that system legitimately, and that they take that system and they clip onto it and they steal those secrets and use those then to attack other customers. So with this Secure Enclave in place, those secrets are protected physically. You can't access them from physically outside of the system. So those secrets can't be stolen. They can't be used to then attack other customer systems. So this is unique. Only HPE does this. The next thing you'll see on this slide is quantum resistance. So we are the first in the industry to build in post-quantum cryptography. I was just joking that I've yet to say that correct the entire week. Post-quantum crypto into our systems to protect your firmware. So we're the first in the industry to do this. We don't think we'll be the last. The US government, in fact, is requiring this to be in all new systems that they purchase by 2027. Many other governments around the world have similar requirements. We believe that this is necessary now because the systems that you buy today will likely still be in production, I would hope, in 2027, much less 3-5 years later. In fact, many of you want to run your systems longer, so having that protection in place is absolutely critical. Beyond that, we know that threat actors are out there collecting data now so that they can decrypt that information once quantum computing becomes real in 5 years or so. So being prepared early is absolutely critical. We are there today. Finally, what you see on here is FIPS 140-3 Level 3 requirements. So we are in the process of testing this with the US government. And what this really means is this is the highest level of FIPS of any OEM out there for a BMC today. And it really has to do with physical penetration. So that comes back to that Secure Enclave and our ability to protect a system physically better than any other server vendor out there. We don't stop at the system, though. We take that store and we build it from the silicon, from the server, up into the cloud. And this is where our software comes into play with HPE Compute Ops Management. So hopefully you've heard us talk about Compute Ops Management, or COM as we call it, over the last few years. It's a really great SaaS-based cloud tool that we have that extends the value of ILO from a single system up into the cloud so that you can see your servers regardless of where they sit, whether that's a data center, whether that's out on the edge, somewhere between, and you can manage those systems holistically. So we've added security features in COM as well. We have a security dashboard that we announced earlier this year that lets you see the security status of all of your systems across your environment right there in one easy-to-use location. You can then make updates to the firmware policies. You can change settings. Pretty much anything you can do in ILO, you can access in COM. We have also now just announced this week, and you can see it out on the show floor, the ability to have controlled process flows, meaning that you prevent human error. So I'll get into this in a little bit more here in just a second, but allowing you to put protections on those oops moments that sometimes happen. So the next thing Krista talked about was efficiency. And this is a story that we've told for a while. So when we think about systems that are out there today, we actually still sell Gen 10 systems today. So that came out about 5 years ago. These are still for sale today. In a Gen 12 system, you can take 7 of those Gen 10s, replace it with 1 Gen 12. So the performance increase is massive. If you look back towards Gen 8, and I guarantee some of you out there have Gen 8 systems in your environment, 26 to 1. 26 servers down to 1. Now, what that means is not typically that you're actually ripping out 26 servers and putting in 1, because the bar has moved, right? The example I like to give, I just switched to a Garmin watch recently. My wife wanted to track me while I'm out hiking so I don't die. But what I've realized is I like data a lot, and it's got a step counter on here. And I get really excited when I hit my step count because I usually sit at a desk all day. So I've been walking around all week, and I hit 7,000 steps, great. I woke up the next morning, now it wants me to hit 7,200 steps. Well, that's not fair. The bar keeps moving, and it's the same thing with the performance of our systems. Is that yes, you can consolidate down, and you'll likely get some great savings from doing that. But what you're really getting is that performance to actually handle your workloads in an efficient manner. Because the truth of the matter is, when you can consolidate down and do more with less, you're doing it much more efficiently. You're saving up to 65% of the power when you think about that versus Gen 10 comparison. You're saving costs on management. You're saving costs on people who have to interact with those systems. Not to mention the risk and complexity that has to do with, well, does this OS still support this? Do I have the right drivers, right? Configuration drift, all of those kind of issues. So simplifying down the process with these newer systems. Now, another great new innovation you've heard us talk quite a bit about this week is HPE Morpheus VM Essentials. So this is a new software package that we've released. And what this is going to allow you to do is give you a lot of flexibility in your virtualization choices. And we can actually show you how you can save up to 90% of your software licensing costs when making this same transition. Because we've moved from a core-based licensing model to a socket-based licensing model. Hugely important as you see sockets or core counts continue to get bigger and bigger in these systems. All right? So all that's great. But now you have to manage it, right? And you have to manage this in a way that's efficient, that's automated, and that saves your people time. Well, we did a study with Forrester Research, and what they came back with after talking to some real customers using compute ops management is the numbers you see here on the screen, is we have provided an extremely secure cloud-based tool that can save people up to 75% of the time it takes to manage basic tasks on their systems. Not only this, but there's real time and money involved, right? 4.8 hours per server per year that your people are spending touching a server goes away. And up to $152,000 worth of travel costs to go out and deal with these systems, because let's face it, they don't all sit in data centers anymore, goes away because I can do everything remotely. So huge savings, huge efficiency gains. This is one of those tools that once customers get their hands on it, they actually get into the environment, and we can show you demos. They go, wow, how did I do this without a tool like this before? Now, earlier in the year, we offered a few new features on COM that I'll reiterate here. So number one was now the ability to offer AI-driven insights for your power usage, for your carbon emissions, to not only see what you're using today, but to be able to predict out into the future what that looks like, so that you can start to actually plan your costs accordingly. And now this is even more important in some parts of the world where there are government regulations requiring you be able to report on your ESG standards. Now you can actually predictively say, we think we're going to be here next quarter, and plan around that. Really, really powerful for customers. But we didn't stop just at COM. We also did improvements to ILO itself. We've improved boot times by up to 30%, making that general experience for your server better. So we continue to try to streamline operations, automate operations to offer you all a better experience. That doesn't stop in February. A couple of new features we're showing this week. So first of all, you should see up here on the left side, we have basically improved the ability to make case resolution faster for you all. Is everybody out here familiar with what an AHS log is? Active Health Systems. Anytime you come into support, somebody probably says, hey, can you send us that AHS file? It's got all the information on the system that basically tells you what's going on with that server. And it's been a little bit of a painful experience for customers, having to go get that, download it, figure out where to go put it on Dropbox or something, and get it over to us. Well, we've now automated that for you. If you've seen our case automation feature in COM, which basically recognizes problems, automatically opens the support case, COM can now actually pull the AHS file and send that to support for you to expedite that process. Not only that, but you can take your AHS file, upload it into COM, and we will parse that file for you and show you the important information. So a lot more access and visibility to what's going on in your system. The next feature we're going to talk about here is really about simplifying operations. So many of you that I've talked about, and I know my counterpart Justin, who runs our software group, has talked about as well with customers, is that sounds nice, but I don't just have HPE servers in my environment. In fact, most customers have multiple vendors of server in their environment. So we recognize this, and COM now has the ability to not just look at HPE servers, but it will actually do health monitoring, inventorying, basic operations like that for third-party servers, including Dell, Lenovo, Supermicro. So the ability to see your entire server estate and then act on that accordingly. Finally, minimizing downtime. So this is back to what I mentioned earlier around secure workflows. The ability now to put processes in place that will allow for you to have, hey, I want to go do this action on the server. I want to run a firmware update. Well, that firmware update might take the system down, right? So that needs Joe's approval over here before anybody does that. So it allows you to kind of people-proof your processes to allow you to prevent problems. So a lot of great new stuff, very practical, coming out in COM, available to see this week, and available live in the tool. So next I want to talk a little bit about that optimization that Krista mentioned. So this is true for big systems, for little systems. We kind of do everything, but I think it's really critical that people understand. We've mentioned liquid cooling a few times. And liquid cooling is very cool. It's something that's coming in the future, certain parts of the world much faster than others. But what's really important to understand here is that 6 of the world's top 10 supercomputers, HPE, including the top 3 Antonio mentioned. I think it's like 6 or 7 of the top 20 green supercomputers, HPE. 7 of the 10 largest credit card processing companies in the world use HPE. When the workload and the performance matter, HPE is where customers turn. And that's true in these high-performance systems as well. In fact, when you look at inferencing for AI, there's a benchmark out there called MLPerf that many of you are probably familiar with. All the vendors do every time they do a generation, they do all this performance benchmarking to try and set new world records. HPE has the most world records in MLPerf with our ProLiant line than any other vendor out there. In fact, we have more than Supermicro and Dell combined. So when the performance of the system matters, when the security of the system matters, that's when you come and talk to HPE. So to wrap this all up, you can't do any of this without the right help. And so that's where some of our services groups come into play. Financial services with the ability to help you turn big capital expenditures into operating expenses. The right way to finance these systems. Trade-ins, the right way to make sure you've got the most recent technology to protect your environment. Advisory and professional services, the ability now to help you get some of these complex workloads up and running. In fact, we have Fortune 500 enterprises coming to our AMPS group asking for help with AI setup because it's hard, it's complicated. It took us 6 months to build PCAI with NVIDIA, and we both build those products. So we've got those services and that expertise to help simplify that for you all. Finally, our attached support services, so complete care and tech care. Really great services here, optimized to what you need to make sure you've got the right level of support for your systems. And the great news for you all now, you've heard us talk about OpsRamp. OpsRamp licenses now included in those complete care contracts. So you can kick the tires and play with some of that new software as well. But that's not the only kind of partner that we have. In fact, we work with partners all over the show floor that you've seen out there. Great partners who make all kinds of great technology. And I want to highlight one of those here. So if we can roll the video.
One second. In 1 second, a heart beats. You spot a pattern. A transaction pings. Traffic scales. The line holds. The market speaks. Information jumps at lightning speed. You pivot. We understand the power of a second, and we deliver enterprise compute with performance, efficiency, and industry-leading security to make every second count. Tens of billions of devices rely on servers, with workloads that demand more than ever. From virtualization at the core to possibilities emerging from data-intensive workloads, these transactions are the lifeblood of your business. And in every second of every day, we power it all simultaneously in your data center, the cloud, or at the edge. Building on decades of HPE ProLiant innovation, we secure, we optimize, we automate, and we empower you to scale. Wherever data drives decisions, and whatever the demand, HPE and AMD deliver. Second after second, system after system. Together, we advance. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay. Well, we are proud to partner with AMD. We've collaborated with AMD for decades, and we continue to enhance our portfolio and work together to code and engineer solutions that are efficient and high performant. Now, to talk a little bit more about our collaboration, I'd like to invite up my friend, Dan McNamara, who is the Senior Vice President and General Manager of AMD's server business. Thanks for being here, Dan.
Thank you, Krista.
Yeah.
It's just great to be here with everyone, and what a great couple of days so far.
Yeah, it's been a great week. We've had a big announcement this week. Yesterday, Antonio announced that we would be doing Gen 12 AMD servers, but didn't tell you which ones we're doing. So today we're going to show those to you. Let's go ahead and show them. We have a new DL325 and DL345 Gen 12 that has all the Gen 12 innovations that you just heard about from John. Plus, it has twice the memory of the 325 and 345 Gen 11. So that would be great if you have a use case that requires more memory, like as a service, general virtualization, containers, and VDI. So we're really excited about adding these to the lineup, Dan. So could you talk a little bit about your thoughts on how customers will be able to use these units?
Yeah, sure. So congrats on this launch. We're really excited. We had great success with Gen 11 servers, obviously together, and we couldn't be more excited to launch these new products with Turin, which is our 5th gen EPYC. And if you think about what's in here, it's really about our roadmap is focused on really two things. One is drive maximum performance and energy efficiency first, and then drive a little bit of what John was talking about, efficient and seamless modernization for our customers. And we're doing this with great partner like HPE. And if you think about these guys here, you're talking about massive thread density with up to 192 cores. You have boost frequencies up to about 5 gigs. You have 12 memory channels for the enhanced memory capacity and memory bandwidth. So a lot of value packed into these. And if you think about what Antonio talked about yesterday in terms of modernization and virtualization, and what John just mentioned too in terms of the consolidation, we see the numbers that John talked about in terms of 7 to 1, 12 to 1, 26 to 1, in terms of the consolidation that you can bring to your data center. And you know, the perf and TCO is great, and it's super important, but you and I both know through a lot of conversations, what's really, really important also is building the trust and the commitment and jointly servicing our customers to enable them to solve these problems and do the migrations that we're talking about.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And I know that you travel around, talk to customers all the time, and I talked a lot about workloads. Could you tell me what you're hearing about workloads from our customers?
Yes, so can't wait to get home tonight because this quarter's been crazy with travel, Europe, Asia, and North America. And you know, common theme, specifically around VDI, and it is growing, just like you said, is really about density right? And we just talked about the thread density, but also VM performance. Because their goal is to deliver as many virtual desktops as they can at a lower cost. And that's what we're doing with these systems right here. And if you think about in Europe, I was there a couple weeks ago, one of the largest banks deploying Gen 12 servers. Healthcare, with healthcare deliveries, probably one of the biggest users of VDI and growing. And we have multiple wins across there. And then just this weekend, a semiconductor manufacturing company sent me a note, a post-visit a couple of weeks ago, and they're deploying Gen 12. So, while this is just being launched, I really feel like we've got it going and we're bringing a tremendous amount of value to our customers.
Yes. And there's something else that we've worked on recently together. We created a compact edge platform that we launched last fall. And this is something that actually the idea for this was born here at Discover, upstairs in the hallway. We had a sales leader that called on retail, and she told us her customers' needs were changing, and we didn't have what she needed for a customer. And after I kind of got over the shock that we didn't have what we needed, we got to work with her and her customers and other edge customers and other verticals, and we created this that's purpose-built for the edge. And I know our teams work together really closely on this. We've talked about this and worked together closely on it too, and I'd love for you to share your thoughts.
Yes, so I can only smile when I think about this server because it's basically my favorite server in the market today. And for the reason you just said, it's really the first one that was designed from the ground up for edge workloads. And it comes with an embedded lower power processor that basically drives you can pack 64 cores into a much lower power profile, such that you can actually run these edge workloads, but also do it at a very low power. And it's so compact.
Yes.
So I think what's really exciting about that is I think we should show everybody just how compact it is.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, did you carry on with that?
I could have, but I did not. But I do know someone who does. Actually
okay.
packs it and takes it with him on trips. So,
And it's obviously compact, but it's also quiet. And you can put it on a wall, you could put it on a desk, you could put it in a cabinet, and it's secure. It has physical security as well as our great ProLiant security inside, and even intrusion detection. It's not plugged in, but if we were to take off this cover and then plug it in, it would know the cover was off. And it's resilient. It can handle from -5 degrees C to 55 degrees C. That's 131 degrees Fahrenheit. It's hotter than it is in Vegas. This thing is tougher than I am. And it has a dust filter built into the bezels, so it can handle dusty environments, it can handle vibration. And if you put it with COM, which is a fantastic solution for the edge, because you can see all of your servers, no matter where they are in the world, and easily manage them, then you have a fantastic duo. And it supports 3 GPUs. So you want to do computer vision? You can do it with this. And one of the things that we're announcing this week is that we've turned this into an Azure local integrated system. So you can have a true hybrid experience at the edge.
Yeah, because Azure Local is a great application, and it's great that 3 of us can partner with that. One last point on this. I talked about the processor inside, but the real key here is, and Krista talked about the edge earlier. All you need for this is power and Ethernet. And you can do remote config and remote management. So it's really a powerful machine. And I just think we're just scratching the surface with this. So
Yes,
I think the sky's the limit where this goes.
Yeah, well, Dan, thank you so much for your partnership on these and everything else we're working on together in the future. And I'm so excited that you got to come and share the news in person. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, now I want to invite John Carter up. You've heard about emerging workloads, you've heard about challenges, you've heard about what we have new with AMD. Now I want you to hear from some of our customers. John?
All right, like Krista said, you've heard enough from us, so let's hear from some of your peers. You've heard us mention VDI a couple of times, so we're going to start there. First of all, we're going to bring up a customer from Borgo Industries. Now, Mike is joining us from Canada today, and Borgo, for those of you who don't know, makes high-end, technologically advanced farming equipment. So they've got a lot of very meaty engineers that they had to go through and fix some challenges with. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce and bring up Mike Bailey, IT Infrastructure Leader at Borgo. So Mike, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's an honor.
So, you know, we've talked a little bit over the last couple of days as we've gotten to know each other here, just about some of the problems that you all were facing and how you addressed that. So could you start by just telling us a little bit about why you all thought about shifting to virtual desktops?
Yeah, so we kind of had two main driving factors, but before I can get into those details, I just want the audience to know that Borgo is a global manufacturer. So we span, we're primary in Canada, but we also are in the United States, we're in Australia, India, and so on. So being global was one of the first driving factors, is that we kind of suffered from what we refer to as data sprawl. And so what I mean by that is we had data in Canada, we had data in the US, Australia, and it kind of created a bit of a collaboration problem and some confusion with our users. Sometimes they'd be like, well, why is this fast to access? But when I look at this file, it's slow. At the same time, it also, we had an IT operational concern where we had a backup solution in Australia. We had a backup solution in Canada. And we felt that, why can't we just have one and we just maintain one backup solution? Just for an example, right? So we were looking for a technology that allowed us to, what we refer to as push the pixel, not the data. And that was very important for us because pushing data takes way more effort than a small little pixel does. So then that kind of led into our second driving factor, and that was we had an increasing need for our engineering to have more enhanced accessibility. We had some engineers that were rotating to kind of more rural locations, even at a farm, which didn't really have world-class internet. So everyone here can probably imagine, if you have engineers, that trying to push that complex model to a farm where their compute is definitely a challenge. And so again, focusing on the pushing the pixel, not the data, VDI was that solution for us.
Absolutely, and when we were talking yesterday, I stole that phrase from you and wrote it down.
Yeah.
I really like that, push the pixel, not the data. But
yeah.
Talk to us a little bit more about what that migration was actually like in practice.
Right, so we started small. We started with 4 users, and those 4 users were primarily the 4 engineers that we had that were having their issues with accessibility. Mm-hmm. Now, it didn't take long. We went from 4 users and we scaled over a multiple few years and we hit up to 400. And so what our main focus was is that we wanted to build a solution that allowed us to start small and continue to build it and scale it. And so one of our implementation plans was actually to just start implementing to our furthest remote location. And so a quick Google search actually revealed Perth, which is where one of our offices are, is actually the furthest or the furthest place I could stand on land from our Canadian data center. So we started in Perth. And it was really simple. We went there, we assessed their infrastructure, we set up the infrastructure in Canada, and then basically go live, we had them log into their virtual desktops that were also in Canada. And so they were accessing their data as well as their compute all in a local environment, as well as having now the local experience of the Canadian services. So that's basically how we did. And then as we transitioned, we just continued to work closer and closer to home.
Okay, so start small and scale.
Yeah.
You got a vacation to Australia out of it.
Yeah, and our staff, our IT staff is actually kind of upset. We haven't been back there since 2017. So.
Well, you can't please everybody.
Yeah.
But what kind of outcomes did you see from that?
So we saw a ton of outcomes, very positive, and I think a lot of people can resonate here. If you have engineers in your environment, when you have, say, 90 engineers, that means you have 90 engineering desktops. And then you also have some of those engineers that have mobile engineering laptops. Mm-hmm. And when you have 90 plus systems, that means you have 90 GPUs in these systems. And so one of the biggest things that we noticed was the reliability of VDI. And so when we had these 90 plus systems, we were in a situation where every month we had 1, 2, maybe 3 GPU failures in these desktops, and then it would tie up our IT operations team to triage, get them back up and running, and so on. And so in comparison to VDI, we have 12 GPUs compared to the 90 plus that we had back in the day. And since 2017, we've only actually had 1 GPU fail.
Wow. So massive consolidation, reliability gains. That kind of talks about the user a little bit and kind of that upfront acquisition cost. What about the long term? Have you seen any efficiencies that the business is going to get to enjoy?
Yeah, so I could talk about this a lot. But a few things that I want to highlight is that I've already talked about the GPU savings. We're not replacing $1,200, $2,500 GPUs in these workstations anymore. But that's just one component. Now we no longer have power supply failures. We no longer have bad sticks of RAM failing at these edge devices. So when you think of all those peripherals, the downtime, that was definitely, again, a major benefit on the bottom line.
Yeah.
Then, for us, we were able to remove all of our global infrastructure. We have nothing but switches and firewalls in all of our remote sites. So everything is centralized now in our Canadian data centers where all of our IT staff is as well. So there's cost savings there. And then another big factor that people actually overlook quite frequently is the power savings that we get from VDI. And so we actually performed a full power study compared to our traditional desktop fleet to our VDI fleet. And we range anywhere between 70 to 76% reduction in power consumption. And in this power study, we obviously included, the thin clients, the servers, the networking, the storage, et cetera, right? So it's massive. So one of the key things, though, that we really like to talk about when we're talking about the environmental benefits of VDI is that for every 23 desktops that we move to VDI, we save the equivalent of power to power a home for an entire year.
Wow.
Yes.
That's really meaningful.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for sharing your story today.
Yes.
Thank you for being a customer. It was great
Absolutely.
to have you here.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you'd be happy to answer questions for customers if they've got them after the session as well.
100%.
Yeah. So thanks, Mike.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
So a great example of a customer who has moved to a modern infrastructure and gotten real savings that they can demonstrate, even in the short term. Now, our next guest up here is going to come to us from the UK, from a specialty bank called Shawbrook, that gives very specialty services, and you can imagine the technology that goes with that has its own very unique requirements. So to talk a little bit more about him and his company's transition to a hybrid cloud environment from being more of a pure cloud provider shop, I've got Alan Harper joining us from Shawbrook Bank, Director of Corporate Technology. Come on up, Alan. So thank you for being here.
No,
a little bit more of a flight for you than for Mike.
Yeah.
How you feeling?
Not as good as Australia, but
But you said you were out having a good time last night, too.
I was having a good
All
time.
right, so you're doing better than me. So can you share a little bit more about that migration I mentioned and kind of what drove you there?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm sure a lot of people have been in this situation where organizations were very cloud first. And then they started to receive the invoice from the cloud providers, and they quickly rethought that strategy. So as things progressed, we went from a 3-par with C7000 chassis, and we refreshed with ProLiant Gen11s, and Electra MP. And we went from 1.5 cabs down to half a cab. So we had straight away some great savings from a colo location. We get charged on power, and now we're able to reduce that further. In addition to that, it allowed us to develop what's called a hybrid multi-cloud strategy, or our hybrid multi-cloud strategy, and we've gone more of a cloud-sensible route, which means we can evaluate all of our workloads, and we are governed by 10 principles, some of them being around security, performance, cost, availability, but really data-centric focused and security focused.
Sure.
What we was able to do with the way that we worked with HPE and our partners, we're able to migrate our entire estate across 2 data centers from our old infrastructure to our new infrastructure within 3 months.
Wow, that's fast. So you mentioned security, you mentioned performance. Were there other benefits that you noticed?
Yeah, there was plenty of other benefits, but I'll just round up the first 3. We have to rebuild our data warehouse on every evening, and regularly that has to be available by 8 a.m. What was happening was we were really cutting it fine, rebuilding it every night to make sure we hit that deadline. Now that we've upgraded our hardware, we're able to actually just use the memory. We don't even write to disk straight away. It uses the memory, writes the data warehouse, and we're able to do that in 1 hour. So our data engineers are even more happy because they're able to sleep through the night now without being woken up to ensure that they can actually work on more important things the next day. The second thing that we was able to achieve because of the stability was we achieved our service level agreement. So we have a target of hitting 98% on a monthly basis of the data warehouse build, and we've hit 100% pretty much 11 out of 12 months. The one failure we did have wasn't due to compute, it was actually due to source data. So again, it's really improved the business's reaction, and they're able to modify and generate business for us because they have the data available to them. And thirdly, over the last 5 years, we've acquired 3 different companies, and that's come with its own challenges as well. As every company knows, data is its most important asset, and we've been able to onboard different companies, and our last company that we've been able to integrate, we've done within 3 months from start to finish, which is no mean feat when you take into account users, data, and their services.
Great, so speed and simplicity, and I caught that. I appreciate you letting us off the hook on that one piece of downtime. But what about surprises? Is there anything that kind of you weren't ready for?
So we already run a VDI environment on premise, and we use it for our third parties. What we wasn't expecting to use it for was for our own staff. Now, last year, there was a well-known software update that went out to a lot of machines and caused an issue. And that was a global issue. Whilst our server estate was unaffected, what we was able to do is transition the handful of users or the few hundred users that we had that were affected and spin them up a VDI within the case of around 30 minutes, and we were back with our workforce up and running and able to serve our customers and our business. So I had happy colleagues from my side being colleague focused. Our customers were happy because we was able to continue service them, and no one else knew that there was an issue going on within Shawbrook.
That's really great, and it feels like those kinds of disruptions are more and more common. So really happy to hear that it worked out so well for you all.
Well, we're all in IT. Things happen.
That's life, right?
Yeah.
No, appreciate you coming and sharing your story, Alan. And again, Alan will be around. I think he's pretty busy today. He was just telling me his schedule, but I know he's here and loves to chat. So thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. Cheers.
So a big thank you again to both Mike and Alan for sharing. It's really great when we can get you all up here engaged with us and hear a little bit more about how this technology really impacts your businesses. But to wrap us up, I'm going to bring Krista back up just to share some closing thoughts.
Thank you, John. All right. Thanks to John and all of our presenters today. You've heard a lot from us about our new portfolio, about Gen 12, all the innovations we have. You heard from customers, you heard about VDI implementation, refresh, and now it's time for the 25-word summary. So let's compare how this compares to what you're taking away from the session. Next level security, performance, and automation with Gen 12. Refresh and save 65% on power, 7-to-1 ratio Gen 10 to Gen 12, optimized edge, 145, compact, quiet, and resilient. Wasn't easy to get 25 words. Hopefully this is roughly what you're taking away. All of you have different situations. You may be taking away different things. And I thank you for being here. And if you want to learn more about refresh, we have a simple calculator. You can use this QRC code. And you can kind of roughly see, based on the server generations you have, how much you can save if you upgrade. So it's pretty simple and easy. There's only a few questions. And then if you want to learn more, first of all, go to the show floor. We got everything. You can get up close, open the boxes, see what's in them. And then there's other sessions where you can delve into it a little bit more. And even the synergy session that customer liked all those years ago still has all those benefits. If you want to see the latest and greatest on synergy, go check it out. Well, I thank you for coming. I thank you for your attention. I hope you have a fantastic Discover, and I look forward to connecting with you.